God, I'm shiny. I'm shiny, and this camera looks worse than it usually does. But that's okay. We're gonna actually hop into the stream. I'm gonna hop into the stream to make sure everything's rocking and rolling. We got audio, stuff like that. The goods, the good. Can you hear me? You can hear me. Can you hear? Love that. Love that. Okay. So yeah. Oh God, breaking things. Okay. Salutations, friends. My name is Brianna Bond, otherwise known as No Ordinary Scholar, and today, like I said, we've moved all of my book streams over to this channel over here. So this is not the first one I've done on this channel, but it's the first one I believe since the hiatus. So, although I did do one like in the middle of hiatus, but still, we're gonna celebrate anyway. And first of all, self-promotion, The Queen of Thieves, A New Throne. It is available on Amazon.com. Check that out. I believe it should be linked down below, unless YouTube hates me, because sometimes YouTube hates me. But we are talking about this book that I read, Shards of a Shattered Soul. There's stuff to talk about. There's quite a bit of stuff to talk about. So let's start. Just things you need to know about the plot. First of all, we are in a world with gods. There are 3 of them. Apollos, Mythos, and the Allfather. I believe that's their names. Like, the Allfather is not the third one's names. I just really don't remember his name. Unless there are 3 gods. And it's a dad and 2 sons. Sons kill the dad, and they decide they're going to go off and rule their own realms. The way gods work in the story is that their power is gained based on how much people believe in them as a god. So we do eventually have this woman who's from some other planet. She's sent to Earth to just protect, monitor, stuff like that. Her name's Elena. Elena, yeah? Or Elaine? Elena. And eventually, she'd just been there so long, and the power she had, no one could really understand, because they have the ability to become, she personally has the ability to become one with the wind. Her species in general has the power to become one with whatever element or whatever that they are basically assigned at birth. And so her powers just people couldn't understand, so they became it got to the point where they started to worship her as a god, and she became too powerful for her people to really control. So she just did whatever she wanted, and she decided to have kids on Earth. That's the gods. Number 2, we have this priestess. Her name is Vera. In this area that we're talking about, it's a little confusing as to whether or not the realm that they're in was run the same way prior to this big war they had, or if they suddenly decide they're going to have a monarch after that war. But there are for sure 5 families, and one of the families was going to war. Vera was with the rebellious family until they were trying to storm I guess they did have a monarchy the whole time, so they were trying to storm the king's city, the major city, and a dragon attacked. Sorry, my cats are starting to play with the rubber ball. They're adorable, so I'm just going to let them have it. But they were trying to storm the king's city, and a dragon appeared, and it burnt everyone around her. She prayed to the Allfather, and he protected her. And because of that, now she's devoted her life to the church. You have Tristan, who is now the king of this area. I don't remember what any of the town's names are. He's the king. His mother is Elena, the goddess lady. And that's really all you have to know about them. You have this guy, I don't even remember his name, but he used to work for Mythos, but he believes that the gods are just taking advantage of everyone around them and just causing way more death than is needed to be. So he has deceived Mythos. He is closed off the pathway into the afterlife. So on Earth, we have all these zombies coming up, and those zombies are killing people, and those people that are being killed are now becoming more zombies. So he gets his own little circle going on. He infinite zombies. Although if you cut off their heads, then you do get to like actually they're done. From what we're shown, if you cut off their heads, they're gone. You have, and finally there's this King's Guard. Once they realize that this is obviously there's way more dead on the planet than there are living, so they're quite outnumbered, and they hadn't even been planning for a war. They were out into the king's hometown trying to restore his old home. So he sent one of his men out to go grab reinforcements. The reinforcements come, and Vera is able to finally kill one of the skeletons, one of the undead that they claim is bringing everyone back to life. But from the very beginning, it did not seem like this specific skeleton was necessarily in control of him. It might have been just the stronger host. It might have just been the stronger host for the person that was actually behind it, which I believe I am correct in thinking. But they do end up killing him. So this book, I had such a roller coaster with this book. First of all, it was the reason it took me so long to get to the stream. It was so hard to get through this book because the first 60% of the book, there's so much exposition, and the author is not strong with integrating the exposition. It's very it feels like I'm reading a textbook. It feels like I'm being given a list of facts instead of being told a story, and it makes it really hard and dull to read. So it took so long for me to get through that. And the reason I believe there was so much exposition, and the reason why I think it was 60% of the book was exposition, was because the author had several completely separate stories going on. And I know what it is like to write a book with multiple characters. They might not all be in the same place. But when I'm writing my spy books or something like that, the characters are all tied in together because they're all reacting to the same things. They're interacting with things that we may have seen someone else have a hand in a different section. But in this book, you see so many times there are essentially 3 separate chunks of a story, and none of them, while in the end they will all be related to the endpoint, they're not bouncing off of each other. So it feels like I'm reading 3 very separate stories. And because they are 3 very separate stories, they all had to have 3 very separate sections of exposition. So you had this Vera storyline where you have to go over the history of this war that she went and her finding power in the Allfather. And then you hop over into the storyline from the point of view of the guy who did decide with the whole undead thing. You have to go over to his point of view, and I had to get exposition about how he came to work with Mythos and how he had decided that this was not the right way and stuff like that. And then you have this other storyline with Tristan's brother, Elena's other son, who you have to have exposition about how he's a magic wielder. He's a wizard of some sort. There's a specific species, I don't remember. And you have to have exposition about that. You have to have exposition about his powers, because obviously he's special and stuff like that. So I had to have exposition for 3 different stories, and because, again, I don't think the author did it well, it was just so hard to go through. But once we got past that, it was so much better. The author knows how to tell a story. I just don't think they knew how to integrate all of that past information into it. But yeah, once was everything perfect? Of course not. Nothing's perfect. I swear on my life, I think I'm the only person that this really bothers. There were so many sections where the entire page has the same word repeated like 8 times, and it bothers me. Like, if they use, did I write down an example? Like, if they used the word or the phrase smashed its head open 8 different times in the same page, it bothers me. It feels like a clear tell that the author didn't really try to expand the way that they can describe the story, and to expand the way that they can tell the story by describing it different ways, by going into a different, maybe instead of just saying like smash its head open, describing what it looks like for the bone to be going everywhere, stuff like that. And so there were so many times in this book where a word that, if I saw it once, would be a very good descriptor, it is seen so many times in such a short period, and it just makes me feel like do you need a thesaurus? Thesaurus.com. It's like it truly, to me, feels like a toddler has learned a big word for the first time, and so now they're using it anytime that they can, instead of someone crafting a story. That is part of the craft to me. That is something that is very noticeable in the craft to me. I swear I feel like I'm the only person who like has an issue with that, I guess, though. I personally, because like I said, you had this guy who closed the pathway into the afterlife. And so all of these skeletons came back because all of their souls returned. Because I guess they were all just in the waiting room. They didn't actually get to the afterlife yet. Because one of them, the one that is supposed to be the leader, I believe they said he died like 7 years ago. If that, maybe even longer. So I guess he returned all of the souls from the afterlife and put them into the dead. First of all, I truly hope this book is not going to lead into any form of redemption for this man, because he's already lost that kind of credibility with me. Having the idea and being okay with the fact that his little skeleton monsters were still killing people, I'd like, that is, you are either an idiot or beyond ignorant. I truly, the credibility this character could have had for some sort of redemption story is lost when he has actively said the only way for everything to be okay is if you let me, if instead of them killing all of you and you guys having your souls go to rest and be at peace, I get to kill you and then you come work for me. He has lost all real credibility with me because of that. But the other thing is just, I don't know what it is, but for me, the idea of, in this story, the skeletons felt super out of place and super awkward. Like, I felt like there were so many other ideas that they could have had for what could be this massive army that they can't fight, that they can't really control, and that they're being overwhelmed by. I feel like they could have had so many other options that would have better fit the world that has been built for me. But then we went with skeletons, and that just felt like it felt super, it just felt so awkward with the story. I know we're talking about he wanted souls to no longer pass over, So even thinking about what I feel like I would have preferred it if even if the souls themselves just took over other things than just the skeletons. Go back to your skeletons. Because it's still closed. They're still not able to pass over. So those souls are just floating around right now. And I would have felt more brought into. I feel like that would have been more of a stitch in the same world if maybe they had just taken over the plant life. Maybe if the trees were attacking you or something like that. Because that's not super far off. We do have all of these elemental type species that are able to do that type of thing, that are able to take over and become one with plant life. Again, it's a different species, but maybe a soul on its own has different powers than just a plain human. I don't know, but it felt like a sore thumb to just have these skeletons walking around. Meow. I will say, before I get into any other like critique type notes that I put down, I did like the book. Once we got past that 66% of just straight exposition and I was actually just being told a story, I was very invested, to the point I'm actually kind of irritated because the author so you have Vera, and then the guy that went to go get the reinforcements, his name is Sven, and they share all of literally like maybe a page worth of interacting with each other. And that interaction goes, it's towards the end, Vera's trying to kill the guy that is, Vera's trying to kill the guy that everyone thinks is controlling all the skeletons. Rude. And once there is an undead, he's not a skeleton yet because he was recently killed, who is trying to kill Vera. She's been fighting for like 2 days straight, so she's tired. She's about to give up. Sven throws a knife and saves her life. After all the skeletons are gone, because when she does kill they call him the necromancer. After she kills him, all the skeletons go away. So she goes over to Sven. Hey, that was like a dope knife throw. I've never seen anything like it. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. You like that had to be your god protecting you, nothing else. I don't know. And she pulls an Emma Swan from Once Upon a Time. I can tell when someone's lying. That's my superpower. And she's trying to figure out why he's lying. Tristan, his best friend, the king, comes over and is like, no, he's the greatest with throwing knives. And they have a line of flirting of just her saying, well, maybe you should teach me sometime, and him going like, well, I don't think your religious order would be okay with that. He smirks a little bit and then leaves to go warn all the other families, just let them know what's going on. And everyone in the king's father, king's mother, Elena, are all just like, I've never seen this man smile before. I told Sven not to go. I would send someone else. I wanted him to be with Vera. And just that page of them flirting. I don't know how this author has the audacity to get me this invested in a romance after only having them interact with the page. I am offended. I feel trapped so much to the point where I may have gotten the second book of this series because I am so obnoxiously invested in this whole situation. And it might be just I bonded with Vera enough, I guess. I don't really know. I don't know why I care so much, but I do. And I want to know what happens with this whole story. But it's a whole thing. But yes, I did like the book. Like I said, I bought the second book. I'm probably going to read that next, mostly because there is a third book ready for pre-order. And I want to read the second book before I consider pre-ordering the third book, because if the second book has another like 66% of exposition for some reason, like there shouldn't be, there should not be much need for exposition for this book. But if it has just that massive amount of exposition, I don't know if I'd be willing to get it, because I just feel like even for, I think the book was like $4 or $5, even for that little money, I would like to be getting a book that is a book. I would like to be paying for a story, not a bunch of random information that I'm probably not going to remember until it becomes relevant. And then at the time in which it becomes relevant, the characters are going to mention it again. So I don't need to remember half of this exposition. And that brings me to another issue I had. And maybe this is because I just could not get into trying to really pay attention to the exposition that was being given, because it was clunky. It was hard to get through. But I was having so much trouble with the world building. There would just be sections of the story where they're because all of this is obviously just all of the locations, the species, aside from really human and gods, a lot of the things here are just made up, things the author made up. And I would just get to a point where some characters would be talking and they would just mention several different species and several different like places, and I just skimmed through that part because I have no idea what they're talking about. And if it were important, if it's going to be important to me in some way, I'm sure they'll explain it. I'm sure they'll explain it and use it in a better fashion. It was just, there were several times where they were just using a bunch of words related to the specific world, and I didn't feel like I had a good enough understanding of what any of it meant. There was also a period of time where I just didn't know, and it goes off the same thing. I didn't know we weren't on Earth for, I think it was chapters like 3 through 5, maybe. So early on, but we go over to a different point of view. We go over to the point of view of the guy that works with Mythos. I didn't realize we weren't on Earth during that whole period of time. And there is the argument that maybe they're like using locations and stuff of a different, that are known but maybe not to my culture. Like if these are actual locations in Norse mythology, it would be my closest guess, which I don't think so. Maybe it's something related to the Bible, because I know there are two names. Alphaeus is the name of the All-Father God. Alphaeus, and Apollo is his dad's name. Apollos is his dad's name. And I believe that they are names symbolic to the New Testament. I looked it up because for me it was weird to see the name Apollos, and if this author had just made it up, then it really feels like they just took the name Apollo and threw an S at it. But when looking it up, those two names are from the New Testament, so maybe these are locations or something referenced in the Bible, or they could still be from Norse mythology. But at that point, I still don't know what's going on, and it's easy for me to get lost in some of the discussions that they have, because I don't know where we are. I don't know what's the difference between these two species you're talking about. So it's hard for me to get invested in those sections. But again, Vera, we love her. We love that storyline. We want to see her and Sven together. It's been a fun time. It's been a fun time. Chip, are you eating something weird? Yes, you. Is he eating something weird? I guess this could be the last thing I really need to talk about. Would be the fact that there's a little bit of confusion for me on on timelines, because the friend of Mythos, we're just gonna keep calling him that. His name starts with an N. I think it's Naelor. We're not 100% sure, so we're just going with friend of Mythos. The friend of Mythos takes the soul stone, which truly in the book it sounds like it's a mix. Bless you. It sounds like a mix of Marvel Soul Stone and the Horcruxes in Harry Potter. He breaks it and he like spreads them across the universe. But you have Tristan's father, who died in that whole war thing they had, and they brought him back to life with the Soul Stone. And it's confusing because it feels like, if I was looking at it from the point of view of Mythos' friend, he's doing everything basically in time. And when we see the skeletons come to life, it's because there's this massive storm. And I believe like a lightning bolt comes, strikes the ground. And in my head, that is the soul stone attaching itself to a host. But then are there two soul stones? Because they used one soul stone to bring this man back to life. And so that was confusing. I truly did like the book. There were definitely some things that I had to get used to. Some things some things that I had to kind of just skim through, but I never really felt comfortable with the whole skeleton storyline, but we just went with it. But overall, I did like it. I am probably going to read the second book in this series for my next stream, so we'll have fun with that. And yeah, that's really all I have to say on the book. It was decently solid. I would feel like I would be okay with recommending this book because of how invested I did get later on, especially. But that is that is up for change, up for debate, at risk of changing. I don't know the phrase. I can't think of the phrase right now. But I would be willing to change that if the second book is also really rough, intense amounts of exposition for most of the book. Because again, if I'm reading these books, I would like to read a whole story. I would like to feel like there is a whole thing, like I'm being told a story most of the time rather than me being lectured most of the time, and then I get a little dash of story. Side note, I lied to you. This is not the last. Here's the last thing I'm going to talk about. And this is something, I guess it's a personal preference, but it's something that really gets to me. A lot of people out here do not like a cliffhanger. They do not like, and for me, I feel like that's just the type of person that really shouldn't be reading a series. And I know I've said what was his name? Oh, what was his name? Patrick Melrose. The Patrick Melrose books. It felt, there's a difference for me when you have a series of books. There's a difference between having a small conflict end, but still having to deal with the overall conflict. That's what a series should be. And the issue I had with Patrick Melrose, that literally felt like you had one story and you just cut it in random places to make several books. If the story itself has not ended, if the story that you have started, you've no conclusion to any of the conflicts we've had in the story, then I did not get a full story. And I felt like in this book, I did not get the full story. I did not get the full overarching theme of how are we going to solve this issue between the gods. we had this conflict of all of these skeletons are coming to life and we destroyed them. We had the book itself conflict solved. We just did not have the conflict of the whole series solved. And it really feels like there are some people who just don't want to, like, it's not an issue of they extended the whole thing to get extra books out of it. It's they felt more comfortable telling the story in multiple sections, but because there were little stories that could potentially be overwhelming if you threw all of them together. So, small kind rant to end everything off, but again, at the moment, I would recommend this book. And I'm going to be reading the second book in this series, so we'll see how I feel about that one. But until next time, valedictions, friends.